Right, little walkthrough. Explanations, reasons, logic, colour, why not, why to, why should, why shouldn't, what if, why did it wrong, and then did it wrong again, and they did it wrong, and it's still wrong, but I'm really happy with it, so I'm not going to redo much again. So started with a blank canvas. Yes, it is an RS lineage Y-wing helmet. No, it is not available as a kit due to the help I do and give to RS. RS very kindly let me have one of the helmets with very strict conditions, which is totally understandable, obviously, because there's a lot of people that have, but I just want to clear things up because I do get messages from people saying, where can I get this, where can I get that? This was strictly controlled, and, it's took a long time for me to get to actually paint it because we wanted to honour RS wishes, and I did so. But thankfully, the guys over there give me permission to show it now, which is nice. So I decided this is the one I love. There's loads of beautiful Y-wing helmets, but there's just something about this one that I just love. And I never really thought about how I was going to tackle it. And I've never really painted a helmet like this before. So it was a first for me. And I hated it all the way through. I loved it, made a mistake, hated it, started again, loved it, made a mistake, hated it, started again, and then just kept going to the point where I thought, actually it's getting scruffy, which in some ways is a good thing because the helmet's very damaged and chipped. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel this one, I'm just at the point now where if I redo any more, it'll get too scruffy. So I'm just going to leave it. I'm happy enough with it just to leave it. So where do you start? Well, we have no idea what paint they used for the base coat of them. They're clearly painted white. Could be anything. I happen to have Reefer White as a cellulose. So I went with Reefer White cellulose, knowing that I was going to probably use the enamels and could clean it off. Makes it a lot easier for cleanup and so on and so forth. So I had a good base coat of Reefer White, which through polishing, cleaning off, ends up, it's a matte paint, but it ends up buffing it slightly anyway. So you do get that slight shine to it, which gives it the illusion of being real helmet as well, which is probably similar to what they did. But this is about what I did, not what they did. So, orange. Clearly hand masked, clearly basic masking, clearly very simple, but at the same time, a nightmare. I wasn't confident it was one of the Archive X oranges, and by the looks of it, SP Daylight Orange seemed to be the closest orange. So I started with SP Daylight Orange, which is a slightly more yellow, faded orange than what's on here now. And I thought, yeah, that's the one. It looks perfect. But because it's all masked off and you just see the orange, I went too far. So when I demasked everything, it was nowhere near opaque enough. It was the translucency, which just wasn't in it enough. It was too thick a coat, and it had lost its charm. So I redid it and I thought, rather than redoing the same colour, in case I was wrong, I'll just try Reefer Orange. And I put a thinner coat of Reefer Orange on, demasked, and thought, actually, I'm really happy with that. It might not be the perfect orange. I still think it probably is SP Daylight Orange, but I thought I'm not going through that whole process again. And I was happy with it. And I knew it was going to fade more once I'd done the weathering and things. So I knew it was going to come closer to the prop. So that's what I used there on the top, is just basic Reefer Orange. It's sanded, it's stained, it's been buffed, it's been polished, so you get the very sort of, quite good variations in tone across it everywhere. And again, it's such a scruffy masking job they've done. There's different thicknesses, and trying to match every little way and why and how they've done it, I just gave up. I thought, I need to enjoy this build. So I've not been too anal, so to speak. I've just been as close as I can. Now, when it came to this area here, I looked long and hard at it, and to me, it was like they'd used the same orange, but possibly gone over it in the red they'd used on what I call the VH1 logo, the VHG logo on the top. And I just kept looking at it and thinking, it does seem like I can see that orange in it, and I can see that red in it. When it came to actually do it, I thought, maybe they didn't do that. And so I thought, well, what colour works? And it's clearly gone over. So it starts off a lighter colour and then it's darkened right down. There has to be a primary colour used, and as usual, I just sort of searched through the Archivex range, and to my eye, it was rust. So I just used plain rust, Liquitex masking along, masked off this area. Down here, there's a scoop here, which I can just about see in the reference. So I masked off, and I masked all this off. So this was done secondary. So I did it in 2 stages. And the rust worked, and then I made a dirt mix of rust. So I added SP Light, quite a lot of it, and a little bit of olive oxide, just to give it a little bit more dirty, sort of muddy look. And it seemed to work well. So then I went over the areas I wanted to be darker and sprayed into it. And it's the same mix that I used to go over it again here, where you can see it's like what you'd see like dirt stains. This is all airbrush, and it's the same mix I've used to get this colour here. It's just in a thinner coat to darken it down, all this area, all this staining around here. So there's sort of 3 or 4 colours going on there. The scarring down here, I did separately. So I had to remask off, re-grey it out, and then go over the white again using latex light. So I reintroduced. If I did this helmet again, I would map out everything that's going to get masked and do all the grey scarring in one go at the beginning. That was just too difficult to do without mapping it out. But now I've done it, I would never do it this way again. Just because you have to re-go over, and you save yourself a lot of time if you put the work in at the beginning by mapping out all the lines, just in pencil over the primer. The primer I used was just a Halfords primer. It was grey enough and to work, really. But the scarring on here is variations of grey depending on what I wanted to go for. So yeah, so that's that kind of area. Again, simple latex masking. It's a nightmare to get it exact to the original. I've just done a likeness of it before. Some people do like to say, that scar there is slightly oblong compared to that scar on the under. I don't care. It was difficult enough as it is, and I'm happy to take any criticism whatsoever. I've just wanted to enjoy it. So, next, the grey at the front. Again, a really difficult grey. Not knowing what to do, not knowing which grey to use. Nothing really looked right to me of my own range. So I dipped into some vintage Floquils I had, and I just chose a grey, which was an SP Lark light grey, but it was much greyer. It was in the enamel range. It was more of a bluey grey than the older stuff. So I went with that, and it's quite dark. But once you've sanded it, I use things called Oakley pads, which I'll just find one. I use these things for going over paintwork. Halfords used to sell them. I don't think they do anymore, so I need to try and find them somewhere else. They're really a fine grip, sponge backed, and they're perfect. As long as you don't go too far. I'll show an example of going too far in a minute, which even, I've gone too far myself. But these are great. They just take the top layer off, they reduce the darkness of the colour, and they blend it, and you can just give it a bit of an age. I don't tend to use white wool and stuff like that. So I've done the grey, did it as one colour, and any kind of variation or shading is done afterwards. Everything's done later on to give it the sort of aged look and feel. But I'm pretty happy. In some lights it looks a lot darker, and some lights it looks a lot bluer, so it's done its job there. The black stripes I decided to do with paint rather than tape, just because I did. And again, some of the dirt staining around there is done with the same mix that I used here on the helmet. So there's a few variations of grey oversprays and things. Again, that was all hand masked. Did some of the chipping first and some of the chipping afterwards. I'm going to go in and touch up some chipping where it's a bit obviously painted, although it is like that on the original. Some chipping, say this sort of chipping was done originally when before I did the base coat with latex, and then some of it is done topically later, which I wish I'd have done originally. But again, you would have to map out all the lines to know where you want it to go, and you'd have to match it all up. So it is possible, and I would do it that way again. I'd be a bit more methodical at the beginning. Now with this emblem, you could always see it was green, but it is a very dark green, and it's been flatted back and buffed. So it's a very dark green that's been made lighter and then got some of its darkness back. So it's like, what green is this? What green is this? Again, I had to turn to my Flowcool collection, and I found a BNSF Heritage Green, which is, I believe, period specific to Return of the Jedi. It's number 181. And I think up to Return of the Jedi, they went up to about 185, 186. So it was within the period possibly when it was done. Not saying it's what they used, I'm just saying it's what I used. It's a really nice dark green. And even after a sand and buff, it's still very dark. It doesn't fade. And also with this area, I noticed it seemed to be in the same green. In a certain light, it looks black. To the eye, as a quick glance, it looks black, where this looks green. But to my eye, the reference shows this as green. So I went with the same green, but I've just not sanded it as much. I've just tried to make it scruffy rather than faded. So that's that one. The reds are like, again, a tricky one. Couldn't really find a red that I thought matched, and I reverted back to zinc chromate. The zinc chromate just seemed to get close enough to be possibly the one they used, and looks kind of good in the environment around the grey. It tonally matches. It's got the warmth, it's got the red, it's got the brown. You can't really see it. It looks a bit more, it's a lot warmer in the room to the eye than it is on the video, because I've got a daylight light over it, so you can see. So that's that area there. The top is Reefer Grey with other greys, just misted in. There's ink stains, airbrushing, removing, sanded, buffed, a whole manner of things going there. A lot of stain on this side. You can see where that like it gets a bit yellower. That's just all ink stain, which has been dabbed on, and then a little bit of airbrush. A lot of scratches, and there isn't a lot of reference of this area really, so it's kind of a bit of a free-for-all. As long as I had that line, I wasn't really bothered. And Reefer Grey, light Reefer Grey seems to do the trick, especially when you've got the dark greys over it and stuff. So again, that was the NGN. That's zinc chromate, just lovely red, seems to match what they've done, and yeah, just looks nice. Again, a big mix of airbrush, hand, topical, and staining everywhere. A lot of the fine scars, they're done with inks and just a piece of paper, literally the edge of a piece of paper, just dunked in the ink and then just dipped onto the thing. There's many different ways of getting scars, and I just tend to just look around the bench, find what I've got that suits the purpose, try it. If it works, leave it. If it doesn't work, get rid of it and do it again. No sort of real, controlled method to any of it. It's just get in there and do it, really, I suppose. This is the first time I've painted it, so I had to learn how to do. Again, this helmet, clearly it's got a blue back. What blue is it? Tried very dark blues, out of the normal Flowcool range. Wasn't happy. And eventually, this is the second time I've done it. I've gone over a greyed out version of this and repeated the process because I wasn't happy with the first time. So this is just standard dark blue. It looks a lot more rich, what you're seeing to the eye. To the eyes, it's a lot more muted. And again, Espilot light greys, Reefer greys, a little bit of black, a lot of topical paint in here. Originally, I was getting too fancy with the latex, and then just ended up going over it and just didn't really like what was seen. But now it's had a bit of a buff and a polish. It's starting to come kind of where I want it. I think the back's the only area I'm probably going to do a little bit more work on, really. But it's, it's nice. As I look at it now, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm quite happy with that. It looks quite nice. Combination of enamels, some acrylics, some inks, with a lacquer base coat, so I can remove. But it's nice because what I did here, I did it the first time and I wasn't so happy with the masking, so I cleaned it off. But I noticed in the reference there's like a pink understain, probably where they've sanded it, and it sanded it into the white. Excuse me. Actually, so by cleaning it off once, I left the pink stain, so you can just see it in here. There's a pink sort of back stain behind everything, and I thought, well, actually, that's actually now closer to the reference. So then I just redid the whole thing over the stain, and it's just one of those things. It was a bit of a fluke. It wasn't intentional, but I would have wanted the stain in the background anyway, and it just saves adding it in last. It just through me being rubbish at masking ended up being kind of right in the first place. So I'm looking forward to getting some of the, I've got some of the parts I need to cast, some parts RS are helping me with that they've got. So to get all the parts on, hopefully this is going to have a yellow visor as well. I'm not going to push my luck, but hopefully it is. But yeah, I have to say, it's just a stunning helmet. I just love these helmets. I think I could paint Y-Wing helmets just forever. They're just so nice. I was tempted to get rid of everything and start again, but actually, now I've done some of the weathering, I know where I hate it, but it's not enough to redo it. You know, and I think once all the parts are on, the visors on, the mics, and all the little greebies, it's just going to come to the next level. So I'm hoping that is going to achieve what I want. But I think I've done an okay job. Not bad for a first attempt. And hopefully I'll show it soon when it's all assembled and looking lovely.